Hey everyone, welcome back to another daily creative challenge. My name is Jesus Ramirez. Thank you so much for being here with me this morning. How's everyone doing? I'm looking at the chat and I see that I already have a whole bunch of people saying good morning. Good morning, Tim, Valdir, Sean, Jurgen, Esther, Beatrice, Leah, Gerard, Karen, Bendam, Justin, Sean, Ken. How is everyone doing this morning? Today is Tuesday and we're going to be working on a project on changing color in Photoshop. This is going to be an advanced technique, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be difficult. It's actually a quite simple technique that is very advanced, and it'll help you separate the different components of color in Photoshop so that you can manipulate them and change them to any color that you want. So before we get started, I want to quickly show you the graphic that we're going to work with. It's that backpack there. Make sure that you go into this website. Let me pull it up into the behance.net /challenge/Photoshop page. Make sure that you click on this big blue button to take the challenge with me. And you can scroll down to Tuesday, September 10th and click on the Get Started button to open a new tab and download this image. This is the image that we're going to be working with. You can, of course, use whatever image that you like, but you can practice the technique with this image, and once you've mastered it, you can try it on your own photos. Once you've tried it on your own photos, you can scroll down if you haven't already and click on Join Us to go into the Discord page. That's the link there, and it'll take you here. And in this page, you can click under Current Challenge and post the work that you've done during these challenges. So this is some of the work that people have worked on. You can see some of the Instagram panels that we worked on yesterday. This is what they look like. I showed you guys how to use the slice tool in Photoshop to slice up an image and create one of these seamless panels that you can post on Instagram. So that's what we worked on yesterday, and you can see that people have been posting photos of those slices. So on the Discord page, you can come in, show your work, ask questions, take a look at the past challenges, look at tips and tricks, a whole bunch of stuff. So I highly recommend checking it out. I'm on Discord, and also some of the other Adobe mentors like Claudia from Print My Soul, Sam, and Tim. We're here answering your questions, comments, concerns. So don't forget to join the Discord community. Once again, that's under this URL right above my head, or from the behance.net /challenge page /Photoshop. Once again, behance.net /challenge /Photoshop. You can click on Join Us to go into this community. While you're here, don't forget to download the file for today, Tuesday, September 10th. As you know, my birthday was yesterday, September 9th, and today is my mom's birthday, so happy birthday, Mom. But yeah, let's get started with Photoshop. Let me open up Photoshop. That's the image that you're going to download from that Get Started link, and it's a photo of a backpack. And the goal of today's challenge is to change the color of this backpack from a dark blue to a light yellow. That's really the challenge. What happens when you need to change the color of something into something that is brighter and the original thing is darker? So let me show you what the problem is by using a traditional method, and then I'll show you how to solve that problem. So first, we need to make a selection of the thing that we want to adjust. So what is the thing that we're going to change the color of? In this case, the backpack. So I can use the quick selection tool and click and drag on the blue, and I can edit the selection once I have a rough selection. So I'm just clicking and dragging on my selection, and I'm going to hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click and drag to deselect. So I'm holding the Alt key to deselect these areas that I don't intend to adjust. So Now I have a very rough selection on my backpack. It doesn't need to be perfect. I can always come back and adjust it later, and that's what we'll do. But I just want to make sure that I don't have the straps selected so that they don't bother me when I'm editing the color of the image. So with this selection active, I'm simply going to go into the hue and saturation adjustment layer. And if you adjust the hue slider, you can see that you can change the color of the backpack, and it works great. But the problem is that if I wanted to make this like a beige or maybe like a light yellow color, the image will not look as good when I adjust the lightness slider. So see if I make it brighter, see how I lose the shadows and contrast of the image, and that doesn't look very good. So that's what we're gonna tackle in this challenge, how to change the color of something that is dark into something that is bright. And we're gonna do so by splitting the image into its 3 components. But before we get to that, let me just look at the chat and see if there's any questions, comments, or concerns. So far, it's just a whole bunch of people saying hello. It looks like we're getting a lot of people joining us. Thank you for being here. I don't see any questions, just a whole bunch of comments. And thank you, Alberto, for saying happy birthday to my mom, by the way. Angelique from the UK. So there's a comment that says, I will take hours to select with the pen tool. Just a really quick thing. This is not really what I was going to show, but I just saw, I believe the person's name is Noor. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. But yeah, selecting something with the pen tool can take a long time, but here's a shortcut. If you actually make a selection, like I have here, I have a selection. I made a selection out of my layer mask. I held down Control, that's Command in the Mac, to select the active pixels of my layer mask. You see that? See how I selected those? I can actually create a vector mask out of that. If I go into Paths and click on this icon here, and by the way, if you don't have paths on there, you can go into Window and Paths. It opens up this tab and you can click on this icon, and notice now how this created a vector path out of that. And now I can go into the Layers panel once again and simply hold, select the layer that you want to affect, and you can hold Control, Command on the Mac, and click on the layer mask icon, and that creates a vector mask. So this is a fast way of getting a rough vector mask, and what you would do from here is just select the direct selection tool and just adjust the points accordingly. Or in newer versions of Photoshop, you have the curvature pen tool, and you can just click and drag on a point and click on the curve to add more points, and then just adjust your vector path accordingly. So yes, vector paths allow you to make really, really smooth and sharp selections. They're wonderful. The downside is that they take a long time to create, but this is a shortcut that you can use to help you speed up that process. So I hope that this helps you out, Noor, on your selections. In this video, I'm not going to worry about having vector mask. We're just going to use a regular pixel layer, but that's an extra tip that I wasn't planning on teaching. But there you go. I hope that you enjoy it. Austin says, great tip. You're welcome. Thank you. Somebody said thank you, and then it scrolled, and I don't know. Well, if nobody said thank you, I'm saying welcome anyway. But anyway, so let me actually start talking about what I was actually planning to teach. So once again, if you use the hue and saturation adjustment layer to make an adjustment like this, and you adjust the luminosity, the lightness and brightness of the image, it'll look great if you make something dark. You know, maybe you wanted to make this into like a dark, purple or something backpack. It'll work great. But if you're trying to make it brighter, then you're going to start losing the shadows and the contrast of the image. So what do you do? What do you do if you want to make this dark blue backpack into something bright, like a bright yellow or beige or something like that? And the answer is, at least my preference is to separate the components of the color and then adjust them separately. And let me just show you what I mean by components of the color. I'm going to double click on the foreground color picker. Here it is. And I can select whatever color I want. The color doesn't matter. The point is that you'll see that there is hue, saturation, and brightness. These 3 values, see that? No matter what color I select, the values change. Hue is essentially what color something is. Is it red, blue, green, yellow, whatever? So we'll say it's red, right? So hue is red. And what is saturation? That's the intensity. So is it very intense or not intense at all? Not intense at all. at 0% is gray, obviously, or like a very, very bright red at 100%. And then brightness is the easy one to understand. Is it bright or is it dark? So those are the three components: hue, saturation, and brightness. If you notice on a layer, if I select any layer, the layer doesn't matter, you'll activate the normal blending mode. All layers that you create are set to the normal blending mode by default. But if you click on this down pointing arrow, you'll see all these different blending modes that you can use. A blending mode simply takes the layer on top, it blends it on the layer on bottom based on the blending mode that you select. It's just a mathematical equation. You don't need to worry about the math. You just gotta know more or less how they work. And you'll notice that blending modes have these lines going across in between certain blending modes, so that those lines, those dividers, they divide up the blending modes into little groups. The first group here is the normal blending mode, which means that there's no blend applied. The only way you could blend, normal, or dissolve is by reducing the opacity of the layer. Then you have the darken blending modes. So these blending modes in the darken category make pixels darker, so white becomes invisible. Then you have the lighten blending modes. These pixels make things brighter, so black becomes invisible. And then you have the contrast blending modes, and these blending modes either make the layers below darker or brighter based on the pixels above. 50% gray becomes invisible, and then if it's darker than 50% gray, it applies a darkening effect. If it's brighter than 50% gray, it applies a brightening effect. If you don't know what 50% gray is, it's actually quite simple to understand. I'll bring up the color picker. You can see that white is 100% brightness, black is 0% brightness, and then the gray that's right in the middle, that's 50% gray. So with the contrast blending modes, anything that is brighter applies a brightening effect, and anything that's darker, it applies a darkening effect. And then we have these blending modes, the difference blending modes. They just look at the difference between pixels and then create some sort of effect. I call them like special effect blending modes because everything that you create with these blending modes, they sort of look like a weird special effect. I don't use these blending modes too much. Let me know in the comments if you use them for something. But anyway, and then finally, and this is what we're going to work on with today, we have the hue, saturation, color, and luminosity blending modes. And these are actually the components that we were talking about. We have hue, we have saturation, and then we have color, which is a combination of hue and saturation. So you can apply the hue of a layer, the saturation of a layer, or a combination of the hue and saturation of the layer with color. And that's what we're gonna use in today's stream. And then luminosity, you disregard hue and saturation and just keep the brightness. So we're gonna use the brightness, although we're not going to use the luminosity blending mode because it's not necessary. But if I wanted to just use the luminosity, I could. But the important one in this stream is hue and saturation, and we're going to use it with the color blending mode. So let me just show you guys what we're going to do. First, I'm just going to create a levels adjustment layer. This could be a curves adjustment layer or even an exposure adjustment layer. I'm just selecting levels because I think it's the easiest one to use in terms of, making something darker or making something brighter, or setting how bright something is or how dark something is. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I click and drag this white point to the left, notice how I make the sky completely white because I took these pixels that were a light shade of gray, and I told Photoshop anything from this shade of gray on this gradient here or brighter would just become white. So that's what I did there. But now, what if I don't want the brightest pixel to be white? What if I want it to be an off-white color? Well, then I'll just drag this point to the left. See that? See how I'm now saying the brightest pixel in this image would just be this shade of gray. See that? Not white. So that's what these sliders do. And the same thing is true for the black point. So I can say anything that is this shade of gray or darker will become the darkest color, in this case black. But if I don't want the darkest color to be black, I can simply drag this point to the right. See that? See how the darkest color is now an off gray? Well, that's why I chose this adjustment layer as opposed to the other ones. It's just easier and faster to select the brightest and darkest color and set it. So that's why we're using it. But you could certainly do the same thing with the curves adjustment layer and the exposure adjustment layer, or any adjustment layer that controls brightness. But it's a lot easier to teach with levels. So that's why we're using levels. let me see. What I'm gonna do now is just simply leave this layer at here. I resetted the layer, so I haven't made any adjustments. I just wanted my levels adjustment layer, which will control brightness. There, I just wanted it there, and I don't need a layer mask, so I'm just gonna delete the layer mask because I don't need it. And then I'm going to create a solid color fill layer, and I'll just select, you know, a bright yellow or just a very light color. The color really doesn't matter, but I'll select yellow in this case, and I'll delete the layer mask because I don't need it. And I'm going to change the blending mode to color, because color, as we discussed earlier, keeps the hue and the saturation of the layer, but not the brightness. The brightness is set with the layers below. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a layer mask that contains both the color fill and the brightness layers to the backpack. And to save to save time, but also just to make sure that I don't spend too much time adjusting layer masks, I'm just going to put these into a group. And actually, here's a trick. So when you drag an adjustment layer into a group, it places it on top, right? So if I click and drag, let me just take it out of the group. See how I have this brightness adjustment layer and I drag it into the group? It drops it on top. If you wanted to place a layer and drop it at the very bottom of the group instead of just going on top by default, you can just hold the shift key. So if you hold shift and drag a layer into a group, it places it at the bottom of the group. But if you just simply drag a layer into a group without holding anything, it places it on top. So that is just a quick shortcut that you can use. Like right now, I added my fill layer, but I should have dragged the levels adjustment layer in there first, but I just didn't do it that way. So now, to save some time, I can just hold shift and drag it into the group, and it places it at the bottom. And if I'm not mistaken, this is something with, I don't recall exactly the version of CC where this switch happened, but before it used to be the opposite way. So if you're like on CS6 or something like that, this will be inverted. So when you drop something in, it goes to the bottom. But anyway, if you're in CC, this is how it works. Latest version of CC. So to be more efficient, I'm just going to use one layer mask. So I'm just going to grab this layer mask and I'm just going to click and drag it into the group. So essentially it contains the colors to the layer mask that I created earlier. And the reason that I want to use one layer mask is that if I make a mistake, I don't have to make changes to two layer masks. I just make changes to one, and I can keep dropping layers into this group and they're controlled by one layer mask. So for example, here I made a mistake. I accidentally selected this area. So what I could do is just come in with the quick selection tool, make a selection, and go into the layer mask and fill that with black. I can fill with my background color, which is currently black, by pressing Control Backspace on Windows. That's Command Delete on the Mac. But anyway, that's why I'm using a layer mask in the group, so that I can use one mask to control the contents of the group. But anyway, so this is where the magic is going to happen, because I've already told Photoshop that I want to make this backpack yellow. This is what the color fill adjustment layer is doing with the color blending mode, which is applying the hue and saturation of that color, right? And it changes the color, obviously. It changes the color and the hue and saturation. Then with the layer below, I'm going to control the brightness. So now I can start adjusting the brightness of this backpack. See that? See how I'm just controlling the brightness of this backpack, telling Photoshop how bright it should be, and just adjusting it accordingly. And I can make it very, very bright without losing the contrast and shadows of the image. So that's the power of this technique. And I can just fine tune this any way that I want, just so that I could have a bright, bright backpack and I don't blow out the shadows like I did with the hue and saturation adjustment layer. So I'm going to hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and I'm going to click and drag this here to duplicate that layer mask, and I'm just going to enable it so that you can compare. See that? See how when we started adjusting the lightness in the hue and saturation adjustment layer, we completely blew out the shadows. But with this technique that I just showed you, we don't blow out the shadows. We have control of the shadows. So I can keep fine-tuning it accordingly and just make sure that we keep the shadows as we brighten up this image. If I want to change the color, I can double click on the color fill layer and I can just make an adjustment accordingly. And then I can adjust the brightness by adjusting this layer mask. And obviously the final point, this is what I do at the very end, is I come in here and fine tune the layer mask. I don't like to fine tune layer mask when I'm just starting because I don't know if they're gonna work. I don't know if I'm gonna keep the adjustment. I don't know if, you know, a good layer mask is required, because sometimes the adjustments are so fine in some areas, or if you're doing a composite, the background will hide some of the imperfections. So like I always leave the layer mask to the very end. So just come into your image and just start fine tuning it accordingly. I haven't looked at the comments in a while, so let me look in case there's any comments, questions, or concerns. Oh, actually, thanks for posting the blending modes tutorial, Bandam Designer. So let me show you. I don't know which one you posted. I have several, but the one that I recommend people watching is if you go into, like, you know, just Google and type in blending modes. I know that my video is one of the first that comes up. So we have obviously the blending modes from Adobe, the Adobe page, HelpX. I talked about this yesterday on HelpX. You can get essentially like the Photoshop manual, like everything's here. So you can see what Adobe has to say about blending modes. But if you scroll down after Adobe's page, Wikipedia, then you'll see me. So I have a guide on blending modes. So click on that. And it's a, I don't know, 45-minute video on blending modes. I talk all about blending modes. You can see this big, huge article. And I describe what each category of blending modes do, what each blending mode, how each blending mode works. It's basically everything you want to know about blending modes. So check it out. I'll place the link on the chat just so that those of you who are watching live can have access to it. And if you're watching a recording and you don't have access to the chat, then remember that you could always search for it by simply typing in blending modes on Google, and I'm right under Wikipedia. So we have Adobe, Wikipedia, and then me right under it. So check it out. And I have other videos on blending modes, but that one's the most in-depth. I have like a little 7-minute like crash course on it, which basically is basically what I did today. Just talked about it really, really quickly. Or you can watch the one that's super long and get all the information that you need on blending modes. Let me see. We have just a couple more minutes. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me know if the example today was clear. What I recommend that you do for the challenge is just find an object that's easy to select, like this backpack. It could be a shirt. It could be anything that you want. And the real challenge is to finding something that is dark, maybe not black, because that'll be a little more complicated, but you know, like a dark blue, a dark color, and maybe even try black. Black may work. If you wanted to make this into a white backpack, you certainly could. You can just make it gray and then adjust the sliders and see how close you can get it to white. Obviously, white from black or from a dark color is much more difficult, but this is the way that you would do it. Just having white as the color, or any color really, it doesn't matter. It could be black, it could be white. We're still not having any saturation or color on that layer, saturation or hue. But yeah, just find a dark image, a dark object, and then select it, and then try to make it into a bright object, whatever color you like. So that's the challenge for today. Don't forget to go into the Discord page. The link is right up above my head. And make sure that you leave your, let me see, where is this link? I don't see it. I have all these tabs open. Make sure that you come into the current challenge page and just leave your color changes here. I would love to see what objects you select. I would love to see what colors you turn them into. And yeah, super cool. If you haven't already, go back into the behance.net/challenge/Photoshop page and make sure that you watch all the videos that we've recorded so far. Today is video number 6, but we have a whole bunch of other cool ones, and you can just click on watch video to watch the ones that you missed and take the challenge and show us what you did on Discord. Let me know if there's any other comments or questions. I'm just gonna quickly scroll through the chat, and I just see a lot of people saying thank you for the blending modes link. You're welcome. Angelique wrote that they're finishing their workday. Can they watch this later? Yes, you can. On that page I just mentioned on the behance.net/challenge/Photoshop page, you'll have a watch video link that you can click on and watch the recording. All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much. I just see a lot of thank yous and your welcomes and all that. So thank you and you're welcome. You're welcome, Aria. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. I really, Van Dam, more streams. Yeah, I have another stream, more streams for the rest of the week. There's another stream coming right after me, like in a couple minutes. It's career building tips and tricks with Brian Allen. So check him out. He'll be on in just a few minutes. So go for like a quick bathroom break and come right back and check out Brian. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for being here with me. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.